In the glittering haze of 1925 Paris, a city still catching its breath after the Great War, the Eiffel Tower stood like a reluctant giant. Parisians grumbled about its upkeep, the constant need for painting to fight rust, the structural inspections, the sheer cost of preserving what many had called an eyesore when it was first erected. Newspapers occasionally ran stories hinting at the unthinkable, that the city of Paris might one day dismantle the Iron Lady for scrap, recouping some of the fortune it demanded in maintenance. Most people read those articles and sighed. One man read them and smiled. His name was Victor Lustig, or at least that was one of the names he used. Born Robert Miller around 1890 in the small Bohemian town of Hostin, then part of Austria-Hungary, now in the Czech Republic, he had reinvented himself so many times that even his origins felt like another layer of fiction. Tall, impeccably dressed, with a scar on his left cheek that only added to his rakish charm, Lustig spoke 5 languages fluently, carried himself like minor nobility, and possessed the rarest gift in the world of deception, the ability to make people want to believe him. By the mid-1920s, Lustig was already a seasoned operator in the shadowy world of international swindles. He had run fake stock schemes on transatlantic liners, peddled worthless land deeds, and operated rigged gambling games in the back rooms of Europe's finest hotels. But those were small-time hustles. Lustig dreamed bigger. He wanted a score so audacious it would cement his legend, and in the spring of 1925, as he strolled the boulevards of Paris, that newspaper article about the Eiffel Tower's rusting woes handed him the opportunity of a lifetime. Lustig's genius lay not in brute force or elaborate gadgets, but in psychology. He understood that the perfect con doesn't fool the victim, it lets the victim fool themselves. He studied human greed, vanity, insecurity, and the desperate need to feel smarter than everyone else. The Eiffel Tower scam would exploit all of those traits in equal measure. First, research. Lustig confirmed the tower's precarious reputation. Built as a temporary structure for the 1889 World's Fair, it had been saved from demolition multiple times, most famously by its utility as a radio antenna during World War I. But by the 1920s the novelty had worn off. The 7,300 tons of puddle iron, a high-purity wrought iron, required constant repainting every 7 years to combat corrosion, as Gustave Eiffel himself had warned in his writings. Paint was the essential element in the conservation of metal works, he insisted, yet the expense was staggering. Rumors swirled in certain circles that the city might quietly dismantle it for scrap value rather than face endless bills. That was all Lustig needed. He set to work with meticulous care. He hired a skilled forger to produce official-looking stationery from the Ministère de Postes et Télégraphes, Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He created credentials identifying himself as Deputy Director General of the Ministry, a position high enough to carry authority, low enough to seem approachable and corruptible. He booked a suite at the luxurious Hôtel de Crillon, one of Paris's most prestigious addresses on Place de la Concorde, and arranged for the staff to treat him as a high-ranking official conducting discreet government business. Then came the invitations, elegant, typewritten letters sent to 5 of the city's most prominent scrap metal dealers. The letters were polite, urgent, and stamped with official seals. They requested a confidential meeting at the Crillon to discuss a matter of national importance requiring the utmost discretion. The dealers arrived, intrigued and flattered. Lustig greeted them in a private salon, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his manner calm and authoritative. He explained the situation with practiced gravity. The Eiffel Tower had become an unbearable financial burden. Engineering faults, costly repairs, and political sensitivities made public discussion impossible. The government had decided, quietly, to dismantle the structure and sell it for scrap. The iron alone was worth a fortune. The highest bidder would receive exclusive rights, provided absolute secrecy was maintained until the deal was finalized. The dealers listened, stunned. Some laughed nervously. Others asked sharp questions. Lustig answered them all with flawless detail. Maintenance figures, projected scrap value, timelines for disassembly. He even arranged private tours of the tower itself, chauffeured in rented limousines, pointing out rust spots and structural weaknesses that only an insider would notice. Among the 5 was André Poisson, a name almost too perfect for the story. Poisson means fish, in French, the classic mark, the gullible one. Poisson was relatively new to the big leagues of scrap dealing. Ambitious, eager to prove himself, but plagued by insecurity. Lustig spotted him immediately. After the group meeting, Lustig pulled Poisson aside for a private conversation. In hushed tones, he confessed a personal difficulty. As a mere government functionary, he said, his salary was modest. Facilitating such a massive deal would elevate his status, but he needed a little extra incentive, a bribe, to ensure everything moved smoothly and quietly. Poisson, sensing an opportunity to outmaneuver the other dealers and secure his place among Paris's elite, agreed without hesitation. He wrote a check for the purchase of the tower, reportedly around 250,000 francs, equivalent to millions today, and handed over tens of thousands more in cash as the bribe. Lustig accepted both with dignified gratitude. Then he disappeared. He fled to Vienna with his accomplice, often named as a man called Dapper Dan or simply a silent partner. Poisson, realizing too late he'd been had, faced a humiliating choice: report the fraud and admit his gullibility to the world, or swallow the loss in silence. He chose silence. The story remained hidden for years. Poisson's embarrassment was too great and Lustig too elusive. But the con was so perfect, so deliciously audacious, that Lustig couldn't resist doing it again. A few months later, emboldened by the first success and perhaps convinced the mark's silence would hold, Lustig returned to Paris. He repeated the exact playbook: forged letters, Krillin meetings, tours of the tower, the same solemn explanation about government secrecy and scrap value. This time, however, one dealer grew suspicious. The story sounded too familiar. He contacted the police. Lustig, sensing the net closing, vanished once more, this time for good from Paris. The second mark never paid, or if he did, the transaction was interrupted. But the legend was born. Lustig had sold the Eiffel Tower twice, once successfully, once almost, and walked away richer, freer, and more infamous than ever. The Eiffel Tower scam was Lustig's masterpiece, but it was only one chapter in a life dedicated to deception. Earlier exploits included the infamous Romanian box, or money box, scam. Lustig would approach wealthy marks with a mahogany box fitted with intricate, fake, machinery. He demonstrated how it printed perfect $100 bills, slowly using hidden rollers and preloaded genuine notes. The mark would pay thousands for the device, only to discover after Lustig's departure that it produced nothing but blank paper after the initial demonstration bills ran out. One particularly bold variation targeted Al Capone himself. In Chicago, Lustig convinced the gangster to invest $50,000 in a crooked scheme, promising double the return. He kept the cash in a safe deposit box for 2 months, then returned it with an apology. The deal had fallen through. Capone, impressed by Lustig's honesty, gave him an extra $5,000 as a gift. Lustig walked away richer, having used Capone's own money to fund other schemes, without ever crossing the mobster enough to provoke revenge. Lustig's career spanned continents. He operated in New York, Chicago, London, Vienna, and Paris. He forged bonds, sold non-existent real estate, ran rigged card games on ocean liners, and even posed as a nobleman to fleece aristocrats. His charm was legendary. Secret Service agents later described him as elusive as a puff of cigarette smoke and as charming as a young girl's dream. Lustig's luck ran out in the 1930s. He turned to large-scale counterfeiting, producing high-quality fake $100 bills through a network that threatened to undermine confidence in the U.S. economy during the Great Depression. In May 1935, Secret Service agents arrested him in New York after a tip-off. While awaiting trial, Lustig escaped from the federal detention headquarters in Manhattan by fashioning a rope from bedsheets and climbing down 17 stories, dressed in prison dungarees and slippers. He made it to Pittsburgh before being recaptured a month later. He pleaded guilty to counterfeiting and was sentenced to 20 years. Alcatraz, the infamous rock in San Francisco Bay, received him in 1935. There he filed over 1,000 medical complaints, most ignored, until his health visibly deteriorated. Transferred to the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri, he contracted pneumonia complicated by a brain abscess. On March 11, 1947, at age 57, Victor Lustig died. His death certificate listed his occupation as apprentice salesman. The irony was perfect. What makes Lustig's story endure isn't just the audacity of selling the Eiffel Tower, it's what it reveals about human nature. He didn't force anyone. He offered opportunity wrapped in flattery and secrecy. He made his marks feel clever, privileged, ahead of the curve. In the end, they conned themselves. The Eiffel Tower still stands today, repainted every 7 years, its iron lattice gleaming under fresh coats of bronze paint. Tourists queue for hours to ascend it, never knowing that for a brief moment in 1925, a man with a scar on his cheek and a forged letterhead owned it on paper. Victor Lustig proved that the greatest scams require no violence, no threats, Just the right words at the right time, delivered with unshakable confidence. In a world full of marks waiting to be made, he was the smoothest operator who ever lived.